Only eating at celebrity-owned restaurants for a full day? Okay, first we went to Lady Gaga's adorable family-style Italian-American restaurant that she owns with her parents, and they have like drag performances, and it's so cute. And anyway, on to the food. The portions are huge. Like this chicken parm was bigger than my head. It had a nice crispy crust, so much melty cheese, and the sauce was really sweet, and the pasta was al dente. But the gnocchi with white truffle sauce was my favorite by far. It was the creamiest, richest, most savory sauce that was just swimming with juicy mushrooms and perfectly pillowy gnocchi. And the herbs brought this freshness like I couldn't stop eating it. And then we checked out Susan Sarandon's Ping Pong Club. It's literally a club where you can play ping pong while you drink, and they have like robots that you can play with too if you're by yourself. But the robots are so good. Like I was smoked. And they've also got lots of food so you can eat while you play, like these teeny tiny tacos, which were really crunchy and fresh, and these adorable little pigs in a blanket, but on a pretzel bun. And they had a nice little snap too. I think the sliders were my favorite because they were actually really buttery and juicy and cheesy, and the bacon was crispy. Like they were way more flavorful than I was expecting. Wait, I take it back. The birria baos were my favorite. They had kimchi, and the birria was so tender, and they had a nice little kick too. Also, the bun was so soft, and that's all for today. Only eating Wingstop for a full day. I've never tried this spicy Korean sauce, but it is so good. It's sweet with a little heat, and it's like garlicky and peppery and just really flavorful. And of course, the ranch is so creamy. Apparently they use mayo. Weird, but delicious. And these tenders actually had a little crunch, and the mango habanero is like spicy and fruity, and with a tangy blue cheese, it's the perfect combo. And I am obsessed with their corn. They just dump on the seasoning, so it's super salty and zesty and a little sweet. And the bone-in wings are pretty tender. The original hot sauce isn't like crazy spicy, and some of the pieces were a little bit fatty, but the ranch literally makes everything better. And later I got the Louisiana voodoo fries, but the cheese sauce and the ranch made them super soggy, so I had to air fry them. But then you guys, they were just so crispy, crunchy, and with a thick ranch and like the cheese with the Cajun seasoning, it all blended together so well, and they were so flavorful. And look at how shiny this bun was. So I tried the sandwich with hickory smoked barbecue sauce, and it wasn't bad. It was a little drier than the wings, but the sauce was sweet and tangy, and again, the ranch cures a world of hurt. And finally, you have to microwave the brownie to get the chocolate chunks all melty, and it's so good. It's like soft and warm, super chocolatey and rich. It just melts in your mouth. And that's all for today. Only eating Chinese takeout for a full day? I have been craving some cheap, sugary, crispy, Americanized Chinese food, and this sesame chicken was steaming hot, and it literally hit the spot. Like so sweet, a great crunch, pretty tender too. And they just dump on the sauce so it like soaked into the broccoli too. And then these wontons were swimming in chili oil. Like they did not skimp. They fully melted in my mouth. The pork was so juicy, and the wrapping was super tender, and the chili oil had that like warm sesame flavor. Again, so delicious. And then I don't even know the last time I had a crispy crab Rangoon, but they were everything I remember and more, like really delicately crispy, not stale or soggy, with that sugary, bright red, sweet and sour sauce. So good. And for dinner, I had to order from my favorite dumpling house in Chinatown, but I've never tried their hand-pulled noodles, and these hot sesame ones had this incredibly flavorful, really nutty peanut sesame sauce, and you add some chili oil, and that's an addictive combination. It also had these like tangy pickled veggies and scallions, and yeah, I literally couldn't stop eating it. And I really wanted to try this stewed pork burger, which is just stuffed with tender chopped pork, and the bun is so buttery, and it's pan fried so it gets a little crispy on the bottom. And finally, the dan dan noodles. This Sichuan broth had so much flavor, and the noodles were literally the perfect texture, like not too soft and not too chewy, just so satisfying and comforting. And there was so much pork. They could have been a little spicier, I think, but they had a nice sesame flavor. And that's all for today. Letting famous TikTokers decide what I eat for a full day. First, I messaged Dylan Mulvaney and asked what to eat for breakfast. She said Cinnabon with 5 exclamation points. And I tried the turtle bun for the first time. So it's literally drenched in caramel sauce, and it's got pecans as well as regular icing. It's so like pillowy and warm and gooey, and like the crunchy nuts add the perfect texture. And everyone knows the center is the best part. Like Dylan is a real one for this, honestly. I also got the original because it's just such a classic. It's so nostalgic, and the sugar at the bottom kind of caramelizes a little bit. For lunch, I messaged that Angry Reactions guy who said to try the Chipotle chicken cheesesteak from Jersey Mike's because it's amazing. And just look at it. Oh my God, so much gooey, melty cheese. And the spicy Chipotle mayo added so much flavor and a nice little kick. Like they did not skimp on the meat either. And the bread had a great chew factor. It's kind of the perfect sandwich. And finally, Albert Can Cook actually said to go to a specific restaurant. So it's this gorgeous old-fashioned Russian like living room. And he said to try the borscht, which is a little sweet and has this like thick sour cream and juicy beef. It's so comforting. He said you also have to try the pilmeni, which are these handmade dumplings in a herb butter sauce. They fully melt in your mouth, and the pork beef filling is like super savory, and they're so good with the sour cream. And I'm actually obsessed with these honey cakes. It's these layers and layers of sour cream whipped cream that soaks into the honey flavored layers that are kind of like a cross between a cookie and a graham cracker. And it's so simple and sweet and creamy and delicious. And that's all for today. Everything I ate at the largest open-air food market in America. First up, I got a raclette wheel cheesesteak sandwich, and this smelled wild. Like, raclette is definitely a strong cheese. It's so sharp and pungent and kind of tangy and, like, even a little spicy. They piled on the meat, which was really tender and also grilled just enough to get a little crispy but still be super juicy and moist. And then I saw a tent selling duck fat poutine with so many yummy, squeaky cheese curds and this rich, buttery duck gravy and duck bacon that was really crispy. Oh yeah, this lady thought it was so cute that Chris was holding the umbrella for me while I filmed. And then this place was called Paella Party, and they had these massive pans just simmering with all different kinds, like paella negra, which has squid ink, which really doesn't taste too strong or fishy. It just adds this nice umami flavor, and it also had little pieces of calamari. But the land and sea paella was my favorite for sure because it had this sweet, spicy chorizo and shrimp. And then we saw a guy selling ice cream sandwiches, but nobody was buying any because it was so cold out. So Chris stuck it in his pocket to warm it up, and y'all, it was a fire. Like, what the heck? It had ice cream, but also a pumpkin cream filling that was so cinnamony, and the chocolate sandwich part was crunchy, like giving Oreo vibes in the best way. And finally, this tent had Vermont maple lemonade that's sweetened with maple syrup, and this apple cider raspberry one was literally incredible. It was so sweet and fruity and tart, and that's all for today. Trying New York City's highest rated restaurants all in one night. Basically, they invite the city's best restaurants to open up a new location all under one roof. Okay, so first I tried the biggest fried chicken sandwich I've ever seen in my life. It was $18, but look at the size of it. Just dripping in what they called Nashville hot sauce, but it almost reminded me of a chili oil. It was like really flavorful and spicy, but not creamy, but still really rich. And the biscuit was so soft, it totally fell apart, but that's okay because the chicken was amazing by itself. So crispy, so moist and juicy, and the pickles had the perfect crunch. And honestly, this is the best food I've eaten since I don't know when. It's basically a paratha taco. It's filled with this chicken that is smothered in this super flavorful chutney and this creamy, tangy lemon aioli. And the paratha is so flaky and buttery, like I died and went to heaven. And I keep hearing about this Dominican-style Texas barbecue spot. Apparently, this is the best brisket in New York City. And I mean, yeah, it was so juicy, and it had that like crispy, charred texture. And the barbecue sauce has this kind of vinegary, ketchup-y tanginess, and then also sort of a rich, brown, sugary sweetness, and it's a little garlicky too. They also had tortas that they drenched in honey. It's basically Dominican-style cornbread. It's sweetened with coconut milk, so it's super moist and like thick, really sweet, and so buttery too. And finally, this ice cream spot had the craziest flavors like cinnamon and Mike's hot honey ice cream, which weirdly worked really well. Like, it wasn't spicy, it just added this little kick that kind of enhanced the flavors. And this other one had cookies and cream, sweet potato, and pecan graham crust. Again, I wouldn't think to put sweet potato in the ice cream, but it just added a lot of richness. And that's all for today. My friend cooks all my meals for a full day. This is one of my best friends, Michael. He is a literal chef. Like, he makes these whole elaborate meals every single night like it's nothing. He made this seafood pasta from scratch, and oh yeah, Hallie helped too. Anyway, their whole apartment smelled insane. He made this like asparagus mushroom skillet dish that had this yummy charred flavor. I mean, look at that plate. Like, he baked the pasta too, so the seafood like simmered in the sauce and the flavors just seeped together, and it was so rich. And the steamed mussels were really tender and not fishy at all, and the pasta was literally so buttery and creamy, and the shrimp was cooked perfectly. And the veggies were so well seasoned, really salty, savory, and yeah, I literally couldn't stop eating the noodles, like so cheesy. And then later he made ribs with this incredible like sweet sugary glaze that went so well with that juicy, savory meat. So tender too, like it just fell off the bone, melted in my mouth, and then the mac and cheese was delicious and not overcooked, perfectly al dente. And then we all had to go out because it's Hallie's last night in the city for months, so we went to this speakeasy that literally said it was not a speakeasy, so we almost gave up because we couldn't figure out how to get in, but eventually we made it and had the best night ever. And that's all for today. Trying every flavor of crumble cookies. Honestly, I haven't been to Crumble in like a year and a half, so I was ready for this chocolate Swiss roll that had this thick marshmallow frosting. It was so sweet, but the dark chocolate glaze helped a little, and the cookie had some bittersweet chocolatiness, so it evened out. And just look at this salted caramel cheesecake one. So much chewy, stretchy, salty caramel, and the graham cracker cookie was a little dry, but the cheesecake frosting was so thick that, again, it kind of evened out. And I don't even know if I call this Boston cream one a cookie. It was basically a cake, like kind of fluffy, but kind of dry. dry like a pie crust. It definitely could have been more buttery, but the vanilla pastry cream was so light. It was a nice break from that sugary icing. And I was expecting the confetti cake one to be my least favorite, but the cookie texture was perfection. It was like crispy on the edge, soft and moist inside, and the crunchy confetti added even more texture. And I didn't realize this one was supposed to taste like an Oreo at first, so I thought it was kind of dry, but if you go in knowing that it's an Oreo, it's amazing. Like, definitely have milk on hand though, because it's pretty dry. And finally, the classic milk chocolate chip. My main gripe with this one is that it needs semi-sweet chocolate. The milk is too sweet and it doesn't balance out the sugary cookie well enough, but the texture is pretty fire. And also, I didn't know they sell chocolate milk, which is delicious. And that's all for today. Eating at the spookiest restaurants in New York City for a full day. Okay, first we went to a Beetlejuice themed restaurant where they literally had performers that like sang and danced and all of these like Halloween bubbly drinks. And I got the Sweeney Todd filet mignon, which comes with a straight razor that you can also take home with you if you want. It was pretty juicy too, and the red wine balsamic blood spatter is a nice touch. And this is called the Edward Burger Hands, and they put everything on it, like pepper jack cheese, smoked bacon, this nice runny egg, avocado, roasted red peppers, lettuce, tomatoes, aioli, and the bun is toasted with honey garlic butter. And this death by chocolate cake was so cocoa-y and bittersweet, and it had these juicy blackberries. And then we went to this Victorian era pub that goes crazy for Halloween. There literally must have been thousands of decorations hanging from the walls and from the ceiling. I don't even know how much it cost. Also, the drinks were gorgeous and delicious. We had to get pub food, of course, and this is the best shepherd's pie I've ever had. It was smothered in this rich melty cheese, and the ground beef was like really well seasoned and hearty and a little sweet and like garlicky. And the fish and chips were perfectly crispy and so salty, and the tartar sauce was thick and they were really flaky too. And then I don't know if I've ever had chips and vinegar, but it was really good. The tangy acidity of the vinegar with the salt, it goes really well together. And I've also never had a fried ice cream sandwich before, but it was literally like wheat bread fried around vanilla ice cream and then served with strawberry sauce. And I mean, it's delicious. It's like crispy and creamy. What's not to love? And finally, the classic New York cheesecake was delicious, really smooth. And that's all for today. Letting my bestie decide what I eat for a full day. Okay, first she took us to this crazy rooftop brunch spot with like spinning couches and giant croissants. It's literally called the Big AF croissant. It was smothered in pink icing and it had these like juicy berries and sprinkles and marshmallows, and it was actually pretty flaky too. And then of course we got some bubbles, which were also very pink. And then literally everything was pink, like this sparkly chocolate skull thing that you smash with a tiny hammer. I think my favorite was the pink cinnamon roll because it was really moist and so soft and warm. And then we took some cute pics, and later she wanted to go to a picnic store. No, it's literally a store that sells picnics. Like, you pick all the ingredients you want and then you walk right across the street to the most beautiful part of Central Park that looks like a painting. And then you just unwrap your picnic and they give you a little blanket. And is this not the cutest thing you've ever seen? I think the cookies were my favorite. They had so much chocolate, really buttery and really crispy. And then they gave us a giant baguette. So I decided to make a little sandwich with our charcuterie. I added goat cheese, olive oil, salami, some salad, and look at how beautiful. I feel like picnics are the perfect girl dinner. Like, I just want to mix and match everything and have every single bite be different and unique and delicious. And then we went leaf collecting. Are you kidding me? And I found this giant weird looking tree seed. Like, literally the best day ever. And then we went home and I made my famous brown butter chopped chocolate toasted walnut cookies because she loves them. I used to make them all the time in China. And that's all for today.